as main characters and happens to involve some murders. A legal thriller? No. That's 12 Angry Men or Compulsion. Those are legal thrillers. I'm not sure that you would call this that. Although people are, and I embrace it, and I love that. And if you do love legal thrillers, you will love The Murder List. If you don't always love legal thrillers, you'll still love The Murder List, don't you think?
Oh, yeah. And actually, now that I'm thinking about it, most of the dialogue took place in people's living rooms.
Living rooms, in bedrooms, other places than court, other places than somebody's law office. It's action-packed, the State House. Some of it takes place in the State House. But it is a theme of living rooms. You're so right. That sort of emerged as the book evolved. I sort of realized it myself about 3/4 of the way through and thought, wow, this is kind of interesting, a theme. Who knew? So that's how that happened.
Speaking of evolving, Rachel North as the protagonist, she definitely evolved during the book. Can you talk a little bit about that?
No.
Without giving anything away.
No, I mean, it's interesting because I can't believe I've written a book that I can't talk about, right? That was pretty smart. I wanted Rachel and Jack and Martha. I mean, even though it's mostly Rachel, I wanted them to be equally powerful characters in the book. And I want you to understand why each of them does what they do and why each of them feels the way they do. And I have to tell you, and what I can tell you is for each of those three characters, Rachel, Jack, and Martha in The Murder List, started out in the beginning of the book with me thinking they were one thing and ending up at the end of the book thinking they were something else, realizing they were something else. Since I don't have a line and since I don't know how the book ends, I only know when I sit down to write the next line or the next paragraph or the next scene what happens. So it's always a surprise. So I don't know what's going to happen. There is no foreshadowing in the novel because it can't be, because I didn't know what was going to happen. Just like life and just like unwrapping a news story or investigating a news story, which I've done for so many years, I am in this looking for the story as I write it. And that's what happened with Rachel, and that's what happened with Jack, and that's what happened with Martha. I didn't know what they wanted. At the beginning of the book, I knew what I thought they wanted. And as the book evolved, I realized what they really did want. So I just want the readers to have that same experience finding out the truth as I did, because I really found it out along the way. And it was really amazing and gaspingly shocking to me to find out what happened. And that is really all I can say about it, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Getting back to the legal process, are the side steps that both Jack and Martha take around the legal process true to life?
Yes, absolutely so. To a certain extent, there's a line where you're allowed to use the rules in any way that you think is best for you to use the rules. So whoever knows the most rules, or whoever can use those rules in the better way, wins, right? So if somebody does a lot of research and has cases that are on point and can get evidence in or keep it out based on legal precedents that were set, if somebody has a court officer who's giving them information, are you going to say, I don't want to hear that? You know, if you're golfing buddies with the judge and the judge doesn't recuse him or herself because they think they can be fair, you know, like the lawyers and everybody who works in a courthouse and everybody in the entire system, they're just people, right? They're all people who want something. Certainly there are hard and fast rules where people's lives are at stake because of it, right? People's lives are at stake. A prosecutor has a tremendous amount of power. They have investigators and labs and police officers and assistants. A defense attorney has nothing like that. A defense attorney has to pay for all of those kinds of things. A prosecutor has access to evidence and access to the police. Police officer knocks on your door and asks you something, you're more likely to answer it than if some defense attorney knocks on your door and says, can you please tell me something? They both have subpoena power. So there are checks and balances. There are incredible amounts of protection that defense attorneys have, which they should have for their clients. But how far would you use your powers as a defense attorney and as a prosecutor? Equal ammunition a lot of the time. But how much would you use that? And how much does it depend on how good a lawyer you are and how devoted you are to your case. I've had several lawyers read this book and they say, it is on the money about how lawyers think, and what they consider and what happens behind the scenes in a murder trial. We see, even as reporters and as the public, we see the trial. We hear everything is set. The jury doesn't hear everything. A lot of that goes on out of the realm of the jury. And also, a lot of it is kept out of the trial altogether. And the push and pull and machinations and back and forth and negotiations behind the scenes, we'll never know. Also, we don't know what the lawyer is thinking and what they're doing and what they're leaving out. All those kinds of fabulously fascinating things, all of which, in essence, the goal is to win this case, to be the victor in the high stakes game of murder. So it is incredibly realistic about what lawyers do and how they behave. Absolutely so, for better or for worse.
There's another character in this book who is an investigative reporter, Clea Rourke. A lot of times, investigative reporters are not written about so nicely, we'll say. We know she could not possibly be based on you. We've met you in person, and there's no way. We were just wondering where you pulled this character from.
Again, how many reporters do I know? Many, many, many. And many of us are quite obsessed, just as obsessed as lawyers are, to get what we want in a story. What we're looking for in a story, though, a good reporter. And I'm talking only about a good reporter. Bad reporters are another conversation. A good reporter wants the truth, wants to find out what really happened. An investigative reporter is digging in to find out what the closest to the truth can possibly be, in any way that they kind of can that's not illegal. So Clea Rourke is suspicious in every way about every single character in this book, and she kind of doesn't care how she gets her story. That's Clea's fatal flaw, is that she's so obsessed with getting a good story that she'll really do anything. And there are reporters like that. They don't last very long if they do something that's illegal or wrong or immoral. That just doesn't last. And a good reporter is honorable but incredibly diligent. So Clea knows what her power is as a reporter. She's very self-centered about herself. The world is about her. She's very ambitious. She wants to get the big story, to get the big job, to be famous. And so her goals aren't completely honorable since they're so self-centered. But she does want the big story no matter what the cost. And Clea is willing sometimes to sacrifice personal relationships to get a good story, or to cultivate them to get a good story. She's sort of who I don't want to be, but someone who does really exist. But again, and I don't mean to beat up on my theme here, but again, she thinks she's the good guy too. I had a news director once who told me that a good investigative reporter comes to town and stays till everyone hates them. Right? And then they go on to the next town. So Clea doesn't care if people like her. She's just going to use them to get her story. But again, just like Jack, just like Martha, just like Rachel, she thinks she's a good guy. And we see her point of view as what she wants is the good thing. Everybody can't be the good guy, can they? How do we decide who's the good guy?
The murder list is a different avenue for you. We've already talked about that. How much did you enjoy writing this book?
Well, I loved it. As much as a writer can love anything, you sit at the computer and you think, oh, I have no idea. The murder list is different for me in that the main characters are lawyers. It's not different for me at all because it is a psychological domestic suspense about a husband and wife, about a home life, about professional life, about how personal life and professional life clashes, about love and about honor and respect and high stakes and secrets. And so that's what all my books are about. And that's what the murder list is about, just set in the milieu of people happening to be lawyers as well as friends, as well as husband and wife, as well as lovers, as well as in other kinds of boss and employee relationships, just like we all have in all of our lives. These people just happen to be lawyers, but it's psychological, it's deceptive, they're manipulative. It was great fun for me to write this book. On the days that it was great fun, it was great fun. Every author has days, every writer has days where we think, I don't know whose idea this book was. This is the worst thing that there's ever been. And then other days we think, I read what I wrote and I think, oh, well, that's kind of good. That's kind of interesting. That's kind of surprising. I love being a television reporter. I've been a television reporter for so long. I just won 2 more Emmys for investigative reporting. That makes 36 Emmys. That's crazy.
Wow.
Congratulations. That's wonderful.
It is wonderful. And I love every one of them deeply. But sitting at my desk, making a new world for new characters, for people like you all to read, what keeps me going and keeps me floating is the idea that you all are going to pick up the murder list and be riveted by the story and be surprised along the way in every way. And you'll be in my world and you'll know Jack and Rachel and Martha and try to figure out what's going to happen to them. That is a dream come true, to be like incredibly cliched. That's more than I ever could have imagined my life would be, to be able to sit here and write books that people love. I grew up in rural Indiana, dreaming of being a detective or a mystery writer. And here it is, exactly what I always wanted. That's rare in life that you get that. So I face every writing day full of joy and full of optimism. Even on the days that I think I stink as a writer, I still think, yeah, that's part of it, isn't it? That's part of it, is the self-doubt that you overcome and you do the best you can every day. And in the end, up comes the murder list. How does that happen?
Yeah,
it's great.
I think the best thing about the book was the way it was told. How you had your characters tell their own story with the past and the present both involved. I thought it was great. And how did you keep track of all that?
I do it in a very high-tech way. I have a yellow pad that just lists scene by scene. It'll say chapter 1, page 1, Monday, first day of the book, 9:00. So I know exactly where I am in the book. Then it'll say chapter 5 or whatever, Rachel before, and it'll say the day of the week, Tuesday, 1996. Boston, March, because you have to know what month it is, right? One part of the book takes place in the summer. The book that takes place in the present is in July, and the part of the book that takes place in the past is in March. So there's summer and winter, and that's a way that I use so you readers would be easy to figure out whether it was past or present, not only because I say so, but because it's freezing or hot. It's sort of a subtle way of adding to your comfort level in reading the book. If you ask me how I decided to do it that way, I will tell you that I have no idea. The story dictates how it has to be. So the reader had to know what happened with Jack and Rachel when they met. But the book takes place now. So in order to stop you from being sucked into backstory and drowning in the quicksand of backstory, I just kept it all separate. So there was now, and now before. Does that make any sense? I'm glad
I read the book, yes. Put it to you that way.
Good. I love how you, the reader, and me, the author, begins to understand what happens in the present because you know what happened in the past. And that makes it all, the motivation and the reasoning and the emotion and the obsession becomes clearer as you understand the characters past and present, just like we understand what we as human beings do now is based on what happened to us in the past. Every decision we make has some of the cards in that hand that we play, are cards that came from our childhood, from our young adulthood, from our professional past. All that stays with us, doesn't it? And makes us the person who we are. And that's who Jack and Rachel and Martha all are. Puzzles that are put together with pieces from the present and pieces from the past.
Speaking of planning your books, the book is very well wrapped up. At the end of the book, I don't think there's much left to wonder about. Did you have your ending planned as you went along or when you first started the book?
No, I had no idea. And I can tell you that when I thought of the ending, I was on an airplane, sitting in like seat, whatever the aisle seat of the second row is, with my little computer out. And there was somebody sitting next to me, and I'm typing away, and I figured out the ending, and I went, ah! And the guy sitting next to me says, are you okay? And I said, yeah, I'm okay. And I sat there staring at my computer screen, thinking, can this possibly work? Is this possibly what happened? And I wrote myself a note about it, which I still have, just to keep it in my head about how this could be. So more I will not say, but yes, I wanted the reader to really know what happened, that the